So, welcome everybody. Emily, great to see you as always.
And you, Jonathan?
I think we're going to do a little bit of a change of format today, aren't we? And have a look at some of the recent changes in the legislation and the proposals that will come out next week, and how that looks in terms of the tiers. But do you want to just kick off with where we are in terms of the figures?
Of course, yeah. So we'll just, as ever, show the kind of overarching picture for Warwickshire as a whole. Excuse me a second, get that full screen for you. So if we look at our epidemic curve for Warwickshire, you can see promisingly we've started to see a downward trend over the last week or so. Obviously, we've still got a few more days of lockdown, so the next few days are really crucial in terms of keeping that downward trend going. And then as we move into the tiered system, obviously we want to encourage people to still maintain low levels of social contact to help with that downward trend. So this is the first tier. I'll let you talk through that briefly, Jonathan.
So people, I'm sure, know there's been a government announcement to say that we'll go back into a tier system from the 2nd of December. So these following slides just give you a bit of an insight, some kind of key headlines on that tiering for each one. So tier 1, as you can see, it's got some of the more enabling activity like opening of retail, accommodation again, indoor leisure, personal care sector can reopen. So that'll be a real welcome boost for much of our businesses that are very much dependent on this particular season in terms of their business, but also the ability for people to actually meet with family and friends. I know that's a big topic that Emily's talked about on these blogs, the importance of well-being and being able to meet up with family, friends. Tier 2, a little bit more restriction in terms of the mixing indoors, but also in terms of the pubs and clubs and the hospitality sector, where alcohol can only be consumed on a premises as part of a substantial meal. We'll let government tell us what a substantial meal looks like. I think it'll vary, won't it, from everybody? So, but I get the sense that probably everyone else does. This is it's a guideline to have it with a meal rather than serving alcohol just with a light snack or something like that. So that's the idea of the tier 2 and tier 3. Again,
and I think we were quite pleased, weren't we, Jonathan, just to see that slight change around the 10 o'clock closing, so we don't have such a rush of people at 10 o'clock on the streets.
Yeah, that caused us some real problems, Emily, didn't it? Particularly around our hospitality sector in our busy town centres, where actually that 10 o'clock curfew resulted in lots of people being out on the streets and causing quite an issue for lots of our local communities. So it is very welcome to see that slightly more staggered approach. And then tier 3, much tighter restrictions, no mixing within households indoors, and a maximum of 6 people in an outdoor setting as well. Closure of hospitality, very similar to what we've got now with just takeaway services. And whilst retail remains open, again, closure of things like accommodation, apart from exceptional circumstances. That means if people need emergency housing or emergency support. So a lot tougher in that tier 3. We don't know yet where Warwickshire will fit. We know that tomorrow there's likely to be some more clarity of that tiering, and we should get some sense of where the county will sit within that. So it's worth keeping an eye on for tomorrow and what those announcements are. So
yeah, and I think, sorry, Jonathan, today I think it's quite positive. Obviously, at all tiers, we've got retail businesses being allowed to open. So it's obviously a crucial time for them in terms of the Christmas sales. And we don't want everybody flooding out to the shops on Christmas Eve and having a real, really crowded streets at that time. So I suppose it's encouraging people to spread out their Christmas shopping over the next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only other comment I'd make, going back through all of those three tiers, is to remind people that social distance is important. Where you can work from home. We've still got situations, haven't we, Emily, in some of our businesses where we're seeing workplace-based outbreaks, and we're challenging businesses now to say what more could you do to encourage people to work from home where they can, particularly in office settings, which perhaps can be done from a home environment rather than a work environment. It's still a very important message to carry.
Absolutely. Okay, so then should we talk about what we're all excited about, Christmas? So no matter your tier, the government has opened a window where 3 households can mix. So between the 23rd to the 27th of December, you're allowed to make what's being called a Christmas bubble. So that's people from no more than 3 households. So you can meet with people from your Christmas bubble and only your Christmas bubble within private homes or gardens for that period. You can stay over at homes of people within your Christmas bubble, but you should be back in your own home by the 27th. And you can only be in one Christmas bubble. And once you've made that bubble, obviously don't change it, don't start mixing it up. If you're in an existing support bubble, so this was an arrangement you could make if you lived alone, that support bubble in its entirety counts as one household within those 3 households for Christmas. So I think that's an important feature. However, slightly contrastingly, if you were in a childcare bubble, so that's where if you needed to partner up with another household to look after children, obviously, then that counts as 2 separate bubbles within that Christmas bubble. So if you're including your childcare bubble within the Christmas bubble, that's 2 households already accounted for, so you could only meet with one other. If you're a student coming home from university over the Christmas period, then you count as being in the household bubble that you've returned to rather than your student household, if that makes sense. So you're one, and then you can meet with 2 other households. So the advice is, of course, is before you meet with and interact within your Christmas bubble, just to really limit any unnecessary social contact as much as possible, particularly that kind of 2-week period before Christmas, I would say. That's obviously the maximum incubation period for coronavirus. So if you're really, really careful in those 2 weeks leading up to Christmas, then you will help to reduce your risk. Kids can continue to go to school, but I suppose be cautious and conscious that is in itself a potential risk around transmission. So be really careful around the judgments that you make around taking young children to visit older relatives during that Christmas period. And yeah, the advice is that obviously adults continue to work from home wherever possible, which Jonathan's already said goes throughout the next few months really as advice. So I don't know, Jonathan, if you've made your Christmas plans yet, or if you want to share any of your thinking around what you'll be doing. Well,
there's been lots of chat within our team, actually, within the Trading Standards and Community Safety team, and lots of varying views. And I think the one that overrides everything is this is about our own choice. It's about what we think is responsible for the people who are close to us and that we care for. And as one team member said to me, that they'd sooner be in a position where they can see their loved ones throughout 2021 than have to take a risk in 2020. And I think, whatever decision people make, it has to be in terms of how they view it and their own responsibilities. So that is something I'd absolutely echo. Yeah. But I think also, it is a festive time. It's a people where we should be celebrating the fact of our families and our communities. So I just genuinely hope that people take that opportunity and also take some time out for each other as well, whatever that looks like and in whatever guise that is.
Yeah, I think that's really important advice. Thanks, Jonathan. It's all, as it's been throughout the pandemic period, is a balance of the risk and benefits, really, in terms of whatever social interaction we have at the moment, isn't it? I know personally, I've got older, my parents are obviously older in that vulnerable older age category, and my sister is vulnerable due to underlying health conditions. So we've already had a conversation that we won't be having Christmas together this year. I couldn't quite live with kind of giving COVID for Christmas because I've got a little boy in school. So that brings with it some risk if we were to meet. That said, if you're living alone or if you've had very little contact with your family over this time, obviously having that physical interaction is really valuable. I just, from my own perspective, if we were all to get together and kind of after a few glasses of wine, I think it'd be very difficult for me to not hug my parents, never mind maintain the 2-metre social distance. So I'd rather, we'll have a good chat over Zoom on Christmas Day, of course, to share some of the present unwrapping and share some drinks virtually. So yeah, that's where we've got to as a family. But I think, as you say, it has to be kind of that group conversation with those in your potential Christmas bubble as to what you do. So yeah, looking forward to Christmas, even though it'll be a bit different this year. But we're so close to seeing the light at the end of the tunnel from this whole pandemic that I think, yeah, as you say, just be careful over this period, and we'll soon all be back together. Looking forward to many mass gatherings once we're all vaccinated.
Absolutely, completely right. Good.
I think that's it for our update today. We wait in anticipation to see what tier will be put in tomorrow.
Good stuff. And we hope these blogs are helpful, and we'll post one out next week. We can get a bit more clarity on where we are, what the tiers look like, and what those people watching can help to keep people safe, which is our underlying message.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks all.
Okay. Thanks, Emily. Bye.